and it's kind of beast, but it's just so stupid, and it's awesome. One of the most prominent figures in today's society that you can see is Elon Musk. I mean, this man is in memes. He runs SpaceX, Tesla. He's everywhere that you see. He's an entrepreneur. He's kind of quirky with his designing. He has radical new ideas. He's the face for science. What do you think of him?
I think he's great. I think it's a great, he's a great entrepreneur and businessman. He's one of the few people in pop culture that is able to really gather public support for things that people aren't usually interested in, like, scientific exploration, inventions, space exploration, things like that.
Yeah, and as far as it goes for Elon Musk supporting like the scientific community and expansion into these different areas that we'll talk about a little bit later, it's just really good because in the past there hasn't been nearly as much as what many people wanted. There isn't enough evidence, like even things for like global warming and having to make these changes. He's finally here to say like, hey, here's an alternative solution, let's go to space.
Yeah, I especially like his views and his work in the field of space exploration and space travel, because I've always been really interested in space exploration and humans not just exploring our, not just going to the moon or going into orbit or whatever, but going to, and hopefully in the future going to different planets and exploring farther than we have. And I think it's necessary that we kind of reach out and do what Elon Musk is hoping to do and reach out into space.
Alright, so what are some reasons that we need to expand out into outer space and look for other areas to sustain our life?
Well, the first of which that comes to mind is the human population, which has been growing it's been skyrocketing for the past 100 years about. The rate of growth has been slowing down, I think, for the past, 30 or 40 years. It's been kind of leveling off, but at the same time, there's not enough resources. There aren't enough resources on the planet, or at least not enough that we have the power to harness yet, to sustain all these people. Almost. What are we at? Almost 8 billion, 7.6 billion people right now, and we need to find other ways to sustain that life and to get energy and food and stuff like that for the whole population.
So as far as these things go, though, I think as for things like the different natural energy that we use and population growth overall, I mean, it's going to be stunted in some way, shape, or form. Either we're going to start to slow down the population just for the simple fact that we don't have enough food because of some type of disease, population control, or who knows, even because of ideology and how the average person now is getting older and how a lot of people want to have less children. Who knows? It could be a whole bunch of different things, but we also have all of these resources here that we could utilize in a healthy manner, not only for the planet, but in turn for us as a species to really be able to sustain ourselves and grow instead of using these other harmful forms of energy.
Yeah, I think that's also one of the things we need to focus on is sustainable energy that is already here, like you said. Solar power, wind power, geothermal power, all those different things that are almost infinite in their ability to provide energy for humanity, but we haven't been using them because the people who control the energy production, mostly national governments and businesses that support them, they focus more on short-term financial gains, which is a lot easier to get with things like natural gas and to a lesser extent coal. That's kind of been being phased out, but mostly natural gas, and they've been using that as a means for energy production for the majority of at least the United States. I'm not sure about other areas, but they don't realize that they do realize that it's going to be gone soon. I've seen estimates around 100 years or so, or less than that, but they don't care because once it's gone, they'll be dead, and they'll have made their money, so they don't care.
And as for that, I think it's really important that everybody in the world, we need to look at the bigger picture. We need to stop focusing on the moment like a lot of people were focused on money and furthering their own personal lives. We need to look at the big picture, what's coming next for our generations and even the younger ones today, including us. People like Elon Musk see the bigger picture, but he's also smart enough to realize that the amount of obstacles we will have to go over to achieve enough change as to benefit the world and stop this downward spiral that we're in, he's smart enough to realize that it's not going to be enough no matter what we do. There are too many legal obstacles and people in the way of change. We can't just we can't get everybody in the world to stop using their cars that produce an insane amount of CO2. We can't just kill off a whole bunch of animals and get them to stop producing methane gases. We can't just have all these things happen right now. It's all too radical. But he's able to see that because he can't do anything about that, he's going to give us an alternative. We're going to expand out into space. We're going to do our best with what we have in the moment, and we're going to try to be the most we can for later generations.
Yeah, so you're saying that... Are you saying that it's pretty much too late now for Earth as a planet, so we need to... Since the people on the planet don't care about the means of energy production here, you think we should search for other planets or some other way to get energy?
I mean, no, I don't necessarily think that we're too far gone, but in a way we are, because we have all of this technology in front of us. We have all these alternative sources of energy. We have all of these solutions, but they aren't solutions enough because we have all of these, like I mentioned before, legal obstacles in the way of progress. We have all of these things like just general human desire to be able to get places. So everybody, even if they say, hey, stop using your cars, it's not going to happen. People just don't care. We need to have people that see the bigger picture, and we definitely have people like that, but I don't think that we'd be too far gone if we actually all came together and were able to focus and make these necessary changes so that we're actually able to better our chances of survival on the Earth.
Yeah, I think space exploration is really, really important in this respect, at least, because we haven't, as a race, we haven't gone that far into space. Yes, there have been people on the moon, and that was a great, I think it's a symbolic gesture of scientific advancement, but we didn't really do anything on the moon. Yeah, we collected, rocks and readings and stuff like that, but there wasn't really anything done after that. There hasn't been any countries that have gone to the moon since the 70s or 80s. Actually, I think so. In the next 5 or 10 years, I'm pretty sure there are plans to go to the moon, or manned space flights to the moon by, I think, China and the European Space Agency. I think they are or also Japan. I think they're all teaming up or hope to team up and start up manned missions to the moon again. within the next 10 years or so. And so I think that's a great idea with, the possibilities that we have now to branch out and kind of start up the era of space exploration again.
I mean, as for manned exploration, I think that manned exploration, part of me wants to say, we don't really need it all that much. It's dangerous for man to go out there because we can't survive, these rovers and these pieces of equipment that we have. But I also think that it's necessary just for the simple fact that rovers can only do so much. Humans have intuition. They can communicate back to the base, and they can give their own judgment on situations. They can do different types of experiments given the right circumstances. But these robots that we have, we can only set them up for a certain range of tasks, and it kind of inhibits what extent rovers can actually find different technological advances, not necessarily those, but just different forms of evidence, say for life on Mars. Humans might do a better job, robots might be doing a better job, but robots only have a certain set of skills that they can actually use.
Right. Well, like you said, rovers can only do so much. There's been plenty of U.S. rovers on Mars in the past 10 years or so, but they've collected a lot of useful information. But I think the next step that we should be looking at is sending manned flights to Mars. Hopefully, I don't know, in the next 15 years or so. And the only way that we can really improve our knowledge of space travel and understand what it would take to, say, move a whole colony or create a colony on another planet. The only way we can do that is by sending manned flights of 5 people or so to different planets. There's no way you can collect enough data just from a robot and hope to get a thorough understanding of what you're going to be expecting.
I mean, as for these rovers, the most likely places on Mars that we would expect to see life would be deep underground, in caves, in ravines, in large crevices in the earth where they're not hit directly with these harmful radiations. And even in the ice caps, it's extremely hard to get rovers in these places. And they aren't necessarily all that suitable for man, but they also can't really get down into these areas. It's harder to get them up towards the poles as it would be for humans to drill, climb down, and explore, whereas it's much easier for these robots to land in craters or in plateaus.
Yeah, I think that the direction we should still be going is with manned flight. There have been, I think, in the past, I haven't really heard a lot about them, but I know in the past 5 or 10 years they've been doing tests on Earth. I'm not sure exactly where they're doing them, but they're simulating a Mars colony type thing, where they'll seclude 5 or 10 people for I don't know if they did it for a year. This was a couple years ago. I think they secluded some people for 300 or 400 days and tried to simulate what a Mars mission might look like. And I recall that it went pretty well. They had a lot of, they got a lot of information for psychological information, how these people might interact with each other, being so removed from the rest of civilization. And then they also got a lot of information about processes that they might use and ways that they might start experiments on Mars, things like that, which I think is a really good way to kind of start up these programs again and hopefully reach out a little farther than we have before.
Yeah, and I mean, as it goes for like the isolationist aspect of it, there have been plenty of different areas that they've tested in. Some of the most prominent ones are in Hawaii, where they'll have them go out to like isolated places out on plateaus or up by volcanoes out in the Hawaiian Islands, or they also have different ones where they set up different styled structures and domes that they would use for sustaining life, experimentation, different types of technologies that we would need for Mars. And there have been different things in the deserts in the Middle East and Northern Africa where they've tried to set up different scenarios and lives for what could be people on Mars.
Mm-hmm. I think another thing maybe going in the opposite direction of these manned flights are the probes that we've sent out to, much farther than Mars, probes that we've sent to the outer edges of the solar system, to, to Jupiter and Saturn, and then even farther way out, like the Voyager probes that have left the solar system. A couple years ago, I think Voyager 1 left, or they considered that it had left the solar system. But so I think that that's also an important achievement that we've gotten. How we have the ability to send things outside of the solar system, and again, this is also sort of a symbolic gesture, because the Voyager probe is never going to see anything again. It'll drift around in interstellar space for thousands of years. The chances of it being even falling into another solar system are very, very slim. But at the same time, I think it's a good achievement that we've had, where we actually have the ability to project our technology and our ideas outside of the solar system where we live.
And I mean, as far as it goes with like Voyager, like you said, I mean, that thing's gonna be floating around in space. We don't know what's gonna happen to it. Could meet aliens, could be sucked up by a black hole. Nobody cares that they're not gonna transmit any data back to us. But one thing that makes me think of is Elon Musk and how he just put a car in space with like a replica of a human in it. I think that's just absolutely crazy. And I mean, it's not supposed to leave the solar system. I'm pretty sure it's just supposed to float on the asteroid belt. But imagine being like an alien and coming up on that and be like, bro, what the hell is this? Like, it's just chilling here. There's a car out in space. Like, this is not natural. This should not be here. There's like a humanoid or some type of creature that, who knows, could look like the aliens or not even anything they've seen before. But they'd be thinking like, what the hell is this thing? Like, this is not a rocket or anything that we've seen before. Who knows? They could have cars on their planet. They'd be like, why is there a car up here? Like, what is going on, dude? Like, why? Like, there'd be no point of it being out there, but really it's just some guy's, like, quirky stunt. And it's kind of beast, but it's just so stupid. And it's awesome.
Yeah, well, I think that was even more of a... I mean, it was, in my opinion, it's a publicity stunt. It's, it served a purpose as a payload for his rocket, but at the same time, I think it was a great way to kind of gather support for space exploration and this field of science where most people, you might hear about a new telescope or a new mission or something like that every once in a while. But for the most part, I think people don't pay attention to space travel. But I think this reached a lot of people, and they really, Elon Musk, his car was a great way to kind of gather support for it.
I mean, Elon Musk as a dude, I mean, I think he'd be really cool. He has some fantastic ideas, and one of the immediate things I, thought of, just kind of popped in my head. No reason for it, just completely random, was like, this dude is probably, like, a really damn good uncle. Like, maybe not so much, like, a dad. I feel like he's really, like, consumed with time and, like, other things. But as an uncle, I feel like he'd be that one dude you see like every couple weeks, maybe every couple months, and he'd call you up and be like, "Hey, what do you want for your birthday?" And you'll be like, "Oh, I don't know, Uncle Musk. I just want some money or something." And then he'd be like, "All right, man, I got you." And then he comes pulling up, and you open up this package that he gets to, and it's like, "Holy shit, it's a flamethrower." And he's like, "Yeah, no, I couldn't just give you money. I'm not that kind of uncle." Or he'll be like, "Hey, do you want to go on a ride with me?" Like, "Hey, do you want some like money or to go out and ride in like an exotic sports car? I just got this like new testing done with Tesla." Like, this dude would be an absolute beast to have in your family. Like, he'd be that one dude that everybody was like, "Wow, oh, here's Elon coming in again. He's giving all the good presents." Like, everyone would like be like, "What the hell, man? We don't have all the money to spend on presents like you do," but all the kids would love him, right?
So you're saying you'd like to be Elon Musk's nephew?
So you're saying you wouldn't?
I guess.
And back to the discussion. So, as it goes for, say, extraterrestrial life, what do you think of them, their existence? There are thousands, like, insane amounts of accounts from not only, like civilians and such, but there's also accounts from, like, well-known people, from presidents throughout history. There's evidence in Egyptian hieroglyphs. There's a whole bunch of stuff supporting alien life. What do you think of all this?
I don't believe any of the accounts that people claim, the interactions that people claim to have had with so-called aliens. I don't believe anything that people say, "Oh, there were these green people that abducted me and then they prodded me and examined me on their spaceship." I don't believe any of that, because they're all very similar in essence. Most people's recollection of these encounters, and I don't believe any of them. But that's not to say I don't believe that aliens exist. I'm pretty sure that, well, the chances of Earth being the only planet at all in the universe with life on it, I believe that that's a pretty slim chance. So there's no reason to believe that Earth is special and that we're the only planet capable of supporting life. And I in my opinion, that there are plenty of there's plenty of life out there. It's just way too far away for us to have any contact with it, or with them.
I mean, yeah, I 100% agree with you. So, I mean, there are thousands, hundreds of thousands of accounts from different people varying in status in society, but I think the general account of, "Oh, yeah, there's a bright flash of light in my bedroom in the middle of the night, and I woke up, and I got abducted, and then I woke back up in my bed screaming," or "These crazy things happened to you." I'm like, bro, it's probably because it was a dream. Like, I don't know what you were smoking, but, like, it's probably not true. Like, there can't be, like, there are so many accounts that are so much like each other just for the simple fact that these people know about the other accounts. It'd be different if this was a person completely in isolation and all of a sudden they have this account. But it's, like, a long, like, strong, like, withstanding, like, view of aliens, and it's extremely, like, they're all the same just for the simple fact that they all branch from, like, the same simple idea of what happens when you get abducted. And I think that all of these things where it's like, "Oh, I see, like, a bright light," or these videos or this evidence seen, I think that these aren't necessarily aliens. They're not foreign whatsoever. I think that they're all from home. If anything, they're government agencies. And not to, I mean, talk about conspiracies or anything, but we obviously have more technology than we let out for the public to see. That would only make sense. Why would you give out all of your resources and technology for other countries and people to know about? You need to keep something secret. You need to have the upper hand. But as far as it goes with this, I mean, for alien encounters, I'm not saying that we have never been encountered by aliens. There's accounts, say, by the Egyptians before we've had all of these stereotypes of aliens, with the sun god Ra, who comes out of the sky in a ball of light, or Osiris, who happens to do the same thing, and he has green skin, and he's part human and part dog, and he's the god of the dead because he takes them away in the ball of light. It's just so happens to be that, who knows, like, our understanding today could be much like what it is then, but it also happens to be that it's a combination of these bright lights that we see and also things like people being taken away. And I think all of this kind of goes and branches back to space exploration, like what's next, where are we going to go, and have they affected Earth any further than what we know right now? Because they could have influenced Earth dramatically throughout the years, hundreds of thousands of years, in fact, and made us what we are.
I guess. My view of the existence of aliens is very different than most people's, because most of the time aliens are depicted as some sort of humanoid with, it doesn't matter what, if they're green or white or whatever, but the vast majority of the time they're depicted as having a head, a torso, arms and legs. Sometimes they have ears, sometimes not. But why? I think that's a faulty argument. It's anthropomorphizing things that we don't know about. So, like, what reason would there be for aliens to look like humans? There's so much life on the Earth, like why doesn't an alien look like, like a fish or something? Or even that's not really believable for me, because the ways that we think of life as existing, scientists, astronomers and people are always looking for planets that have water, that have rocky surfaces, that have lots of water, that have a habitable atmosphere, that have lots of oxygen and nitrogen in their atmospheres. But that's what they're pretty much looking for, is places where humans could live. There's no reason to think that just because all the life that we've seen, all the complex life and mammals and things that we've seen, just because they all need oxygen and liquid water to live, there's no reason that other forms of life would need the same things as us.
And I mean, I don't think it's at all outrageous to say in any way, shape, or form that other forms of life could be breathing things that isn't CO2. I mean, they could be breathing like CO2. They could be like us. They could be breathing oxygen. But I mean, plants, CO2, animals, oxygen. Something could be breathing like methane gas, hydrogen. I mean, it's some of the most abundant gases in the universe. I don't see how it couldn't just happen to be that they don't breathe that, and only animals and certain things can only breathe CO2 and oxygen. I mean, it's all about your chemical makeup and what reactions take place within the organism to create the necessary energy. And you can evolve in different ways from being single-celled organisms and stuff like that to being something of a completely different nature.
Exactly. Like, you look at plant life on the Earth. Plant life uses, you could say inhales carbon dioxide and produces oxygen as a byproduct that's toxic to them. So what makes people think that couldn't be the same case for life on another planet? It might not be a tree, but they might use the same processes to form energy for themselves and to survive.
I mean, as it goes for plants and animals, it's really interesting that we're talking about this, just for the simple fact that, I mean, throughout history you can see, we start off with single-celled organisms and we kind of build up. I mean, it kind of depends upon the planet's, like, overall, like, makeup and, like, what elements are most abundant in the planet from the start. I mean, we could have just started off as animals, but we need stuff to eat, plants. It could have started off as plants, which I mean, most likely did. I can fairly guarantee, I can say that it started off with plants, but I'm saying you can see how they've co-evolved. The plants produce the CO2 or the plants take in CO2 and produce oxygen. We take in oxygen and produce CO2, and it's not necessary for one or the other, because if we had a large amount of CO2 or oxygen to start off with in Earth's environment, it could have started off with just animals or just plants, and then just so happened to be that they use these two respiratory systems like independent of each other but yet relying on each other, and it kind of just shows that coevolution and how they've developed.
Right. Well, the first life on Earth, I guess it's postulated that the first life was, only used. I'm not sure if I'm trying to think how they formed their own energy. I don't remember exactly what the first single-celled organisms used, but at some point in that in the process of evolution, there came along an organism that took in carbon dioxide and produced oxygen as a byproduct, and that oxygen, so eventually that oxygen kind of filled up the atmosphere, because it was mostly carbon dioxide and sulfur dioxide, I think, from volcanoes and things. But eventually there came to be more and more oxygen in the atmosphere, and then that was the point where where more complex forms of life could start to exist.
Yeah, and this kind of, it goes back to, like, the concept of, like, the human form and what other life could be. I mean, we have arms and legs, we have stuff, like, move around and such. What are they called? They're like little, like, tiny things that look like bears. They can survive, like, a variety of conditions. What are they?
Tardigrades? You mean with the little mouth with all the spiky?
So, I mean, like, these tardigrades, man, they're like, these little dudes, they chill out. They've been here for thousands, hundreds of thousands, millions of years on Earth. These little, like, water-dwelling dudes. They kind of look like bears. They're super chill, and they can literally survive through pretty much anything. The most acidic and basic of solutions, extreme pressures, the hottest and coldest of temperatures. They're going to outlive human beings, and they've been here for much longer than we have. And I mean, it just kind of goes to show, like, humans and every other animal on Earth, regardless of, like, what they live in, if it's they are able to fly, they swim, they crawl, they walk like humans, they're on land, air, or water, whatever they are in, or even if they're extraterrestrial aliens, like, it's all about the ability to move, and in order for them to be, like, so high up, they need to be able to move and be the best that they can be. Like, we need to, in order to survive, everything has, like, different systems. Like, we have, like, we're smart, we're able to innovate. I mean, other animals can too, but it's in a different, more, not necessarily complex way, but in what we perceive as complex. And it's, everything just has their own way of living. But as for the extraterrestrials, I don't think you'd be at all crazy to say that just for the simple fact that you need to be able to move across land or the medium that you travel through, you need these basic set of things. I don't think it's crazy at all to say that they'd be, like, far off from what we look like.
No, yeah, that's a good argument. I think that you have some good points about things. There are probably some common traits that complex forms of life share if that form of life wants to change their environment and utilize it to the extent that humans have. But again, at the same time, there's no reason why you couldn't move around like a snake. You couldn't just have muscles on the outside of your body that propel you along the ground. But anyway, it could be anything. There could be any form of life, and also even if we came across something, for example, if we observed some life, some organism on another planet, we may not even recognize it as life because it just may seem completely foreign to us. So I really think it's interesting to kind of think about these other possibilities that may exist and try to kind of form a broader understanding of what we deem to be the complex life.
And I think a large part of what we need to talk about, though, is like what we perceive as complex life. We can say that it's like, everything like on Earth is able to, everything that's living responds to stimuli in some way, shape, or form. But I think that as a whole, like, what we perceive as complex life most of the time is like, say for monkeys, they're able to trade in some type of service or food or something that they want, as does for humans with currency and how we trade services and how we get paid to work. I think as it goes for like other species that aren't primates, it also has kind of the same concept, but how do we classify complex life? Do we think of complex life as any type of organism that can respond to stimuli, or do we see them as more of a something that correlates to what we are as human beings, or say primates, for example?
When I say complex life, I mean a form of life that's able to really change their environment and their planet to the extent that humans have, really, with building structures, destroying, deconstructing and destroying natural land masses, changing the composition of the atmosphere, forming a community that there's lots of like abstract concepts, such as money or a city or something like that, where that's what I mean by complex life, where you're able to really form this much more abstract worldview than an elephant, which obviously other forms of life are able to think intelligently and communicate with each other. There's no doubt about that, but the ways that humans have developed to change their environment in this way is really, I think, the criterion for looking for complex life in the universe.
And one thing though is like, how are we going to classify it? Like, other species have co-evolved with each other. They've become more advanced, not necessarily than human beings or how we would like to admit it, but they've become more advanced in, say, different areas and different aspects of their life that makes them able to communicate on different levels and think on different levels than humans, and in ways that we just simply aren't able to comprehend.
Yeah, I think that's an interesting point, that we don't yet understand how, we may think that, our species is more complex or more evolved, whatever that's supposed to mean, but we don't understand how other species function and how they, we don't know quite how they interact with each other on a larger scale. You mentioned that apes are able to, and other species as well, able to trade food and services and things like that, but that's a great example of the ways that they can form a community, like I was talking about. But with humans, it's even more abstract, with their ability to trade things that don't mean anything. Like you have, you could trade a service, you could perform a service for someone, and then have them pay you in food, for example, which are both useful things that allow you to continue on with your life. But humans trade things like, like money, which is a super abstract concept. It has no value. The U.S. currency has it's called fiat currency, where it's not backed by anything. It doesn't have there's no standard, there's no gold behind it, there's no valuable commodity that's providing the money with its buying power. It just says it has buying power because everyone agrees that it should have buying power in order to keep society running, which I think is a really, abstract concept that really shows how complex humans have formed their world and how they've evolved to figure out how to make these things work.
Yeah, and I think that's a really good thing to bring up, because, as far as it goes with, like, currency systems, like, sure, you can trade services and goods and whatever you may need. Like, whatever your heart desires, you can trade, if it exists. But as far as money goes, it only has as much power as you give it. That's why a lot of people, you see old-timey people, and even other people, like, invest in gold because it's the gold standard. It has something backed on it. And all of this just kind of goes to show, like, how abstract and complex we think, but yet it's not necessarily that much, because other species think in different ways, and they might see us as inferior for the simple fact that we don't understand what they say. So, do you have anything else to talk about?
No, I think that's pretty much it.
Awesome. So I think that just about wraps it up. Like and subscribe down below, and make sure to stay tuned on for the next Drawing Board episodes. Thank you.